inspiring patterns in history of believers who prayed and did not lose heart. Okay, so this is a story about a gentleman, a brother named Robert Morrison. And so in 1807, he was about 25 years old. Maybe probably a little older than most of you, but not that much. And so he was the first person to carry the Protestant gospel to China. The first person to carry the Protestant gospel to China. And he left New York to go to China in 1807. He was actually an Englishman from Great Britain, but at that time it was prohibited to sail from Britain to China because the British East India Company controlled all the sea lanes to the Far East, and they were fearful that a Westerner bringing the gospel of Christ to the heathen of China could be disruptive to their lucrative trade relationship. He set sail to China on the American merchant ship Trident, and he reached Canton after 220 days at sea. 220 days at sea. That's a long time, all right? Again, we might complain if we have a 14-hour plane flight somewhere. It seems like a long time, but Robert Morrison was determined to make it to China, and it took him 220 days. It's like 2/3 of a year. So if you leave in January, you're probably looking at an approximate like September arrival. So that's like 2 semesters, basically, on a boat. He made it to Canton, China. He was there until 1834, so he would have been there 26 years. How many people do you think he was able to save and baptize? Okay, 5? That's a good guess. Yeah, the answer is 1. He was only able to save and baptize 1 person in that vast empire. Yet he accomplished his one primary goal. After 17 years of diligent labor, he completed a solid translation of the Bible into the Chinese language, making the written Word of God available to all of the Chinese population for the first time. He died in 1834. Despite the outward lack of fruit, he never lost heart. He never lost heart. For engraved on his tombstone in Macau were the words, "In 100 years there will be a 10,000-fold increase." So he died in hope, even though he didn't see the fruit of his labor. But he died in hope. And actually, you know how many Protestant Christians there are in China right now? In 1949, there was 1 million. In 2010, there's 58 million. Whoa. And there's a professor at Purdue who is projecting the number of believers in China to reach 160 million by 2025, 10 years down the line, which would be more than the United States. Yeah, so China could be more Christian in that sense than the United States if the trend continues like they think it will. Anyway, but it started, this guy, Robert Morrison, it took someone like him to take that 220-day boat journey and to gain just 1 person during his time there, and then, but yet to translate the Bible and yet not lose hope. That is an inspiring story of someone who did not lose heart. Let me tell you just another really short story here. This is a person named Adoniram Judson, who received the Lord at the age of 20. When he received the Lord at the age of 20, he immediately abandoned his dreams of fame and honor in order to carry out the one new goal in his life, to plan his life to please the Lord. Wow. That's good. We need to pray for people like this to be gained on our campus, all right? More Adoniram Judsons who immediately plan their lives to please the Lord. 3 years later, so he's 23 years old. 3 years later, after only 7 days of marriage, he and his young bride moved to India and later settled in Burma. although he was without a single convert for 6 long years. He suffered the death of his only child and was even imprisoned for nearly 2 years. Judson overcame the hardship and was responsible for translating the Bible into Burmese and for bringing over 210,000 Burmese to know the Lord. Isn't that crazy? He had responsibility for 210,000 Burmese people coming to know the Lord. But it started with a lot of difficulty and a lot of hardship. And it took, is there any way that someone could do that if they're not praying? There's absolutely no way. If they weren't assured of the Lord's will in persistent prayer, there's no way that someone can make it through those types of hardships.